Well, welcome to another edition of On Point Live, right here from the Manhattan Beach studios. Hi, everybody. I'm Vince Ferragamo, former Los Angeles Rams Super Bowl quarterback. Alongside of me is my former teammate, 20-year NFL legend, Hall of Famer Jackie Slater. And Jackie, we have to take a recap of week one of the preseason NFL schedule. And, you know, it's only week one, Jackie, but it is an indication of what's to come. What were your observations?
Well, Vince, you know, that question right there, I've been dying to answer because I looked at a lot of teams and I just caught different bits and pieces of those games. But there were some things that jumped out at me that made me question some of the decisions I made about who some of the teams are that are going to be doing really well in the different divisions. Yeah. One of the teams that jumped out at me without any doubt was the Chicago Bears. Now, Matt Eberflus, their new coach, this guy was hired there because of his attention to detail, Vince, and you could see it with the way his defense played. He's a defensive-oriented guy, and you never saw anybody out of position. You always saw solid technique by the linebackers and the defensive line at the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the ball. I was just so impressed with them and how they played in concert. But the other thing about the Bears that jumped out at me, Vince, was the way that Luke Getsky, the new offensive coordinator of the Bears, is going about the business of growing Justin Fields, that talented young quarterback of theirs. Vince, in this game, Justin Fields had 2 touchdowns of over 56 yards, 2 of them. And Vince, neither one of those passes left his hand and went farther than 5 yards down the field. So what did that tell me? That told me that Eberflus has mandated to Luke Getsky that we got to grow this quarterback. We got dynamic playmakers. We got to get the ball in their hand and out of Justin Fields' hands as quickly as we possibly can. And that's exactly what they did, and it was beautiful. They were very, very difficult to defend.
Jackie, that's a really good point because as a young quarterback, you look at what's happening and you want to keep it simple for a young quarterback. Short dunk passes.
Right.
And the run after the catch.
The yak yardage.
Yeah,
absolutely.
yards after catch. So that's really important, and that's a way to build a young quarterback.
Right. You start from shallow to intermediate to deep, and that's what I saw when I watched that game, and they were very, very impressive. The next thing, Vince, that jumped out at me is Mike McCarthy. He lost Kellen Moore, who came over to the Chargers and doing a fantastic job. We saw what he did last week against the Rams, but he's got him a new toy over there in Dallas, Vince. He's got him a new toy, and the new toy is 5'5", and he weighs 176 pounds. His name is Deuce Vaughn. Now, Deuce Vaughn, if you remember in high school at Kansas and college at Kansas State, the guy had 10 straight games where he had 70 yards rushing and 70 yards receiving at that size. And I saw the same thing last week. The way they use him, he is virtually impossible to tackle in space. And I think McCarthy is going to look forward to deploying him. So that was fun to watch.
You always talk about a big man's game, Jackie. This is a little man's game.
That's a little man.
Who is another great player that we saw in the NFL?
Darren Sproles.
Darren Sproles
wasn't much bigger than this guy, and Darren Sproles, as a running back, played 15 years in the NFL. So there's a place for a guy like that, and it's got to be a little bit exciting for an offensive play caller to isolate this guy with people who can't defend him and get critical yardage.
Well, as big as those guys are up front, Jackie, you know, when the little running back's hitting the hole, you can't see him.
Right.
He's hidden.
Yeah,
and he hits the hole fast.
You don't know where to look.
By the time he hits the hole, you turn and look, and he's gone.
And then the other thing, Vince, when he goes on a route, when he runs a route, you got a linebacker, probably a pretty good cover guy, and sometimes a safety that's got to cover him, and he's smaller than them, quicker than them.
Shifty.
So all you got to do is get the ball in his hand. He's going to make somebody miss.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Mike McCarthy is going to enjoy. I'm looking forward to watching the development of Deuce Vaughn. And then the last thing that just jumped off the screen at me was how the Raiders, Vince, at the line of scrimmage are going to be one of the best teams in pro football this season. Their defensive front, they played mostly all their backups. And those guys were dominant at the line of scrimmage. I'm talking about technically sound. That was the first thing I noticed. But they're big-bodied guys that are playing in the scheme that they're using up there, and they were impressive. So that's what I saw. That's what jumped out at me.
They beat the 49ers by 27 points. It wasn't a blowout.
It wasn't even close. And the guys up front, 49ers have gotten big too. Now, they went out and brought in a bunch of big bodies in their offensive line, but it didn't show. It didn't manifest itself. Now, I know they were backups. And as we get closer to the season, they started playing the starters a little bit. We'll find out a little bit more about that offensive front. But what I saw, they were dominated. Well, how about you, Vince? What were some of your preseason
Well, you
game
talk
takes?
about blowouts, Jackie. The other big blowout game was the Jets. They played the Panthers. They beat them 27-0, shut them out.
Vince, that's your boy. Your
Frank
boy.
Wright. I don't know what happened to the Carolina Panthers. They were flat, Jackie. They just didn't. Bryce Young, their rookie quarterback, he was sacked over and over. He was hit over and over, Jackie. And the Jets defense is for real. Now,
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, Jackie, they can put some heat on the quarterback. Jackie, they had 5 sacks. Not only could they rush the quarterback, they played a great game in all aspects.
Great coverage.
Yeah, Zerline kicked 3 field goals, was perfect. He's back to his old form, Jackie. They rushed for 141 yards on 37 carries. Hit 13 different receivers. This Jets team, I mean,
Vince, they had 68 plays.
68
plays in the preseason game.
Oh, that's
That
unbelievable.
means that they were obviously investing in the plays that they're going to run in the regular season. And I think that to a certain point, you have to run the plays that you plan on using in the regular season. You can't disguise everything you want to do.
Didn't you see more running of the football with these teams, Jackie? That's what I noticed, and we said that a couple weeks ago.
We
that
certainly did.
This is a new direction of what's going on in the NFL. Because to build a good team, you have to have a strong base,
Right.
and a strong fundamental run game,
Right.
Okay, and they're getting to it. Well, some of the other big surprises, not really surprises for me, because I've always been a big Pittsburgh guy, but Kenny Pickett is a good young prospect.
In his second year, Vince.
In his second year, Jackie, he had 147.9 QBR rating,
Vince,
the
he showed
highest.
a lot of poise.
Yeah,
He seemed like he knew exactly what he was supposed to be doing at all times.
The thing about him, Jackie, is people like to play around him. He's kind of got a charisma about him, and that was a mark of a great quarterback. Has nothing to do with talent sometimes. It's just the way you are as a person, and I think he's got something going on there. The other thing that surprised me a lot, Jackie, was the world champion Kansas City Chiefs. They played Patrick Mahomes. I was very impressed because I like the way his interaction with some of the young players, how excited he's getting.
Yeah.
That's a full team. That's
no
why
doubt.
they're so good.
From
Andy
top to
Reid's
bottom.
From top to bottom. But Jackie, at the end of the game, they're trying to run the clock out.
They got the lead.
They got the lead. They're in their opponent's 30-yard line. Okay? They're trying to run the clock out. Then they throw a screen pass. Where's Eric Bieniemy? Okay, they got to get him back. Because you don't throw a screen pass when you're trying to run the clock out, Jackie.
Who called that play?
They got it intercepted.
Did Matt Nagy call that play?
I don't know who called that play, but if you're a young coach, don't ever throw a
Andy Reid
screen
or
pass
Matt Nagy, one of them
when you're
called
trying to
it.
run the clock out, because you don't throw a screen pass typically against man-to-man coverage. You throw it against zone coverage. So,
Right.
But anyway, they set up for a field goal, and they lost the game. But it's only preseason. And the other team I was impressed with, Jackie, was the Falcons. Arthur Smith has done a great job. Jackie, the whole defense is big. They're strong. They
Technically
move to the ball.
sound.
They
Technically
are.
sound up
And
front.
they haven't even got to Bijan Robinson yet. Wait until, and they're running the football, Jackie.
They're
And
off. The strength of the Atlanta Falcons right now, in my opinion, we haven't seen Bijan Robinson. We know he's special, that back.
Yeah.
But the strength of the Atlanta Falcons, in my mind right now, is what they're doing up front, Vince. They got good, big, talented, highly skilled,
mentioned that big
technically
offensive
sound guys on both sides of the ball. It's hard to beat that.
Yeah.
We saw that with Philadelphia a year ago. It's hard to beat that.
And Jackie, they dominated the Dolphins, who have a good team. I mean, Dolphins are expected to have a lot of great personnel. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, those were some of our observations. But I think as we look forward now to week 2 of the preseason, Jackie, we got to look at some of these the way how they played in the first week. Is it going to be duplicated in the second week
Right.
of the preseason? So,
Right.
what are your takes on
Well,
this?
I know for a fact that coaches in the preseason, at least historically, and certainly when you go all the way back to 6 preseason games and then down to 4 and now to 3, it's hard for me to imagine that coaches aren't still of the similar mindset where they're saying to themselves, we've got to practice this portion of our game. We've got to practice that portion of our game, be it in the run game, be it in the pass game. And so what I saw with the Bears, and then this is a team that I'm going to be watching, going into week 2. Justin Fields has to be grown. He has to be developed. I talked about those 2 big passes to DJ Moore, 62-yard touchdown, to Khalil Herbert, 56-yard touchdown. I talked about how they're managing Justin Fields. Eberflus is doing a great job with his defense. I want to see that happen again, because what I saw, it defied everything that I predicted about how they would finish in their division. So I'm going to be watching the Chicago Bears and the coach closely to see primarily how the Bears if they continue to do and what they did this past week.
Mm-hmm.
The other game, Vince, that is going to be watched closely by me is going to be the Raiders at the Rams.
Oh, yeah.
And the Raiders at the Rams. Now, the reason why that's going to be so closely watched by me is because the Raiders at the line of scrimmage, particularly on the defensive side of the ball that played hardly any of their starters this past week, dominated the line of scrimmage against the 49ers. Just beat them up. Schematically, they did nothing that hurt them. And this game, in my opinion, was won at the line of scrimmage because the Raiders, they featured some fantastic jobs. They featured some fantastic guys doing a job on defense. Now, the thing that's going to be interesting and telling to me is that when I watched the Rams last week, I didn't see 3 or 4 plays that so impressed me when I went to their training camp. And I know Sean McVay doesn't like to show his hand, and he's got Ryan Wendell, that new offensive line coach, and I am hoping that what we're going to see this week is going to be a whole lot more of what I saw in practice as opposed to what I saw in the game this past week. The Raiders' front line, their defensive front and their offensive line, is going to be a tremendous matchup and a growing opportunity for the Rams' young offensive line as well as their young defensive line. This is a seasoned group of guys over there that's playing with a high level of intensity, Vince, that the Rams' young group of players on both sides of the ball are going to have to learn to match. And so it's going to be interesting watching that matchup. And then Dallas at Seattle. I'm looking forward to seeing Mike McCarthy continue to develop and use Deuce Vaughn, the 179-pound running back that can't be touched in space. It's going to be fun to see, how that continues. And then I'm watching the Saints and the Chargers, see if Kellen Moore continues to do this week what he did last week against the Rams, and that's run the football 31 times with over 200 yards on the ground. And then lastly, the Falcons. I believe that Arthur Smith at Atlanta has made his mind up that the only hope that I have of holding on to my job and winning here is going to be what's going on at the line of scrimmage. We saw him invest $100 million in their right guard, one of the best run-blocking guards, who's paired with one of the best run-blocking tackles in all of pro football. They are using them. They're running the plays in the ground game in the preseason that I think that they're going to be running in the regular season. So that's going to be telling to me as I watch that game.
Well, this week, actually, Jackie, is going to be put in place to establish what direction the team is going to continue to move in. And I think I agree with you, the Bears. You talk about Justin Fields. He's probably one of the durable quarterbacks that we've seen.
Well,
last year he played
6'4", 224.
Yeah, he's got decent size,
guy.
But he's agile, he's quick, he's athletic. He's got great decision making, Jackie. And you know what? Last year was a tough season, but you didn't hear him complain. He hurt his shoulder. You didn't see him stay on the sideline and say, I got a rotator cuff problem.
He played hurt.
He'll play. And that rolls over. Why do you think a guy catches a 5-yard pass and runs for 60 yards, Jackie? So it's a process. It's a process. But I do see better things for the Bears ahead. You mentioned the Raiders, how strong they are on the line. I think that's going to be a good test for the Rams this week to see how the Rams react, because last week they got manhandled a little bit up front. But my games I'm looking for this week, Jackie, is the Bucs versus the Jets. Do the Jets continue to impress? And I don't see why they should not. I mean, this is a total team.
They didn't even have their starting quarterback.
No, they have a lot of guys just sitting there waiting to come in. I mean, just like some of the other teams that we see, like the Chargers. I mean, you see great, but you have to establish the depth, Jackie. You got to build the depth because, guys are getting hurt today. You got to have the next guy. It's man up. The next guy has got to step up.
Which was so impressive to me about the Raiders because they didn't play their starters up front. But, man, the guys that play, you would think that they were the number one lineup. I mean, they just physically dominated up front against the 49ers. When they have the final cut down,
Jackie, some of these teams are going to be looking at maybe the Raiders or the Chargers, see who they're going to release.
Absolutely.
You can't release anybody. The Panthers, the Giants, Jackie, are the Panthers going to start to expose? Are they going to start to, develop their quarterback?
Come on, Frank.
Let's see something. Don't be flat. Let's go out and get ready for the
last
season.
week we found out that their quarterback can take a licking, but we got to find out if he can keep on ticking because he's not the biggest guy in the world, Vince. They can't keep letting this guy get blasted like that. I don't know if they're not. I don't know if Frank is trying not to show something, particularly in their running game. But to me, when I looked at Bryce, I'm thinking, you support this guy with a good running game where people are focused at the line of scrimmage, maybe bringing people extra in the box and all that.
Right.
Now he's going to be able to eat you up like he did at Alabama.
Right.
But I didn't see that when I watched that
you
game.
can't play scared, Jackie. You gotta be aggressive. I mean, you can't be thinking about, well, what if this guy gets hurt, or hey, let's go.
Right.
This is football.
Because
you
played him and you named him the starter, and he got beat to smithereens, if you ask me.
Right. He's versatile. You got to start using all his skills. You can't really confine him to just be a particular type of player. And the Giants will probably get back to Daniel Jones. He'll start to play a little bit more. Hopefully Saquon Barkley will start to get some action.
I think this being
they're going to get rolling.
The second week, I think we can expect the starters to get more reps in this upcoming game.
So that's kind of what I'm looking at, and see how these teams continue to move forward, Jackie, and they get ready for the regular season, because the regular season has got some dynamic games. On Thursday night, the Chiefs will play the Lions, and on Monday night, you got the Jets playing the Bills in New York. So
my goodness.
This is going to be a great start to the season. So you only have a few more weeks left, Jackie. Let's get ready. They got to get ready.
Absolutely.
So, well, that'll do it for us today here on Point Live, and we're glad you stay tuned and watched us. Make sure you subscribe to our On Point channel with YouTube, and also be a follower on our Instagram. So until next time, stay on point.